Hello, new wave of British Heavy Metal.com here. It's the 31st of December 2020. If I may make the usual opening request for a favour, please, and that's if you would subscribe to the channel, that'd be big help and appreciated. Today, I thought we'd look at GTR's solo album from the mid-1980s. I've been listening to it quite a lot lately, so I thought I'd do a little video review of it. Now, GTR, of course, if for those of you that remember, was a one-off project featuring the not inconsiderable guitar talents of Steve Howe and Steve Hackett, two of the great progressive rock guitarists of all time, of course. And Steve Howe had left Yes and recently gone from Asia as well. And Steve Hackett was probably a bit of a loose end after leaving Genesis. So they teamed up, gave themselves something to do for a while, and recorded this album, GTR. Now, it had to be good, didn't it? Steve Howe, Steve Hackett, what could possibly go wrong with two guitarists like that? So, everyone, including myself, rushed out to buy it in the mid-80s because, well, it just had to be good. Even though the cover was garbage, as you can see, it just had to be good, didn't it? Steve Howe, Steve Hackett, fantastic, right? Well, yeah, it is good, but it's not what myself and everybody else was expecting back then. And perhaps they consciously decided not to do some sprawling prog rock self-indulgent epic and move into more mainstream rock stroke AOR territory, I suppose. And that was a bit of a puzzle, as of course what the hell does GTR stand for? Well, the theory is it's guitar without the vowels, and I suppose that makes sense. Anyway, the first listen, it wasn't what we were expecting. It wasn't Genesis and Yes put together and whatnot. It was, as I've said, it was more mainstream rock stroke AOR and lots of sort of like arena rock, I think was the cliche at the time. But there's still all that prog undertone going on between the two of them. It's different, and it takes a bit getting used to, but it's worthy. It certainly is. There's no 20-minute twisty turny prog meanderings and whatnot, but it's still an enjoyable album. And perhaps, as I mentioned, that was a deliberate thing that Hackett and Howe decided to do, something different to what people might have been expecting. GTR didn't last long. They did tour to promote the album, and that was about it. But after it's been reissued with polished up, given the usual remastering treatment, and this package comes with, for my money, what is the standout. There's an extra disc of a live performance from LA in 1986, which is basically the whole album performed live with a couple of Yes and Genesis songs thrown in as well. It's really excellent stuff. But the album, the studio album, that's good as well once you get into it. There was a big hit single off this, When Heart Rules the Minds, and that's here as well. The real like jingle jangle riff, lung busting performance from Max Bacon, and that really did go down a storm. The Hunter follow-up single. It flopped. It's probably not a track that you'd select as a single, but it's a really solid rocky track on its own. And others, so like Here I Wait's got a nice driving chord to it and a big riff and a nice rocker. Imagining is probably my favourite. There's a nice pastoral introduction, and then all the proper stuff comes in. Sort of a prog rock song with bits of Yes and Genesis to enjoy, but they've rocked it up a bit. And the guitars interplay and fade out over it as well. It's good stuff. It really is. There's a couple of instrumentals in there which give Howe and Hackett some room to stretch out and show their individual ability. And Hackett to Bits, for example, and as everything going on there, a nice mixture of a big sounding arena rock, generally harking back to prog rock. It really is good overall, and Max Bacon's got a towering vocal performance in there, and the rhythm section of Jonathan Mover and Phil Spalding is formidable indeed. I've really enjoyed listening to it again after such a long time, hence this review. And the live CD is particularly good in my opinion. Yeah, it sounds a little dated, but it was the 1980s when it came out, but it does stand up well. It's a worthy one-off on its own, and it did divide opinion when it was released. Some people loved it, some people hated it because it's not Yes and Genesis, so it must be crap. Well, yeah, got to have an open mind, haven't you? And there was one particularly famous review at the time that didn't think much to it, and their review was 3 letters, SHT. Now you figure that out for yourself. You know, GTR SHT. But it certainly is not SHT. It's much, much, much better than that. It really is a good, solid album. A little bit different than you might expect from Steve Howe and Steve Hackett. So I still enjoy it to this day, hence I've been listening to it or not, and hence this rambling review. So check it out if you'd like to. As always, link in the description below to the album on Amazon. Link back to the post on the website if you'd like to read that as well. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'd appreciate that. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and take care.